Welcome back to the Retirement Fiduciary Podcast, a place where we have authentic, no BS discussions about retirement planning, investment strategies, and wealth management. Whether you're approaching retirement or if you've already made work optional, this show is for you. Now, here's your host, Adam Koos, President, Portfolio Manager, and Senior Financial Advisor at Libertas Wealth Management Group at libertaswealth.com.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Retirement Fiduciary Podcast, your go-to source for authentic, no-nonsense insights on financial planning and investment management. We're here to help you cut through the noise and make work optional someday so you can live the life you've always dreamt of. Join us bi-weekly as we cut through the noise of news, no shortage of that these days, to bring you candid, fiduciary-driven advice designed for individuals and couples across the country. So whether you're just getting started and feel like you're behind, or if you're in the midst of looking to refine your own personal strategy, we're committed to delivering education that you can trust. If you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X, and be sure to check out libertaswealth.com for even more content. All right, so that's the housekeeping. Allow me to introduce our guest today, Suzanne Campi, a life coach who focuses on one of life's most challenging elements, which is change. But here's the twist. She's all about making sure we don't have to be miserable along the way. So with a background in psychology, a rich history as a former fitness studio owner and recruiter, and with certifications with the International Coaches Federation and National Speakers Association, she brings a holistic approach that helps people not only just navigate life surprises, but thrive through them. So whether it's a job change, retirement, which we deal with a lot here, obviously, a major life transition, or even the psychosocial aspects of retirement, she teaches clients how to build resilience, stay energized, and embrace change with confidence. So she's going to share some practical tools with us, some insights that we can all use to make change a little less daunting, especially when it comes to retirement, and help us become a whole lot more empowered. So Suzanne, thank you so much for joining the show. I think this is going to be something different we've never done before. So I appreciate the time.
Oh, good. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate the time as well. I love your podcast. You have a lot of interesting people on. Hopefully I can be one of them.
Yeah, well, there you go. I think that's what's going to happen. So let's just start with this. Let's just kind of start from a 30,000 foot view. You know, you're a coach. You know, you emphasize that change doesn't have to be miserable, as I mentioned in the intro. Tell us more about just that mindset in general, or maybe even the antithesis of that mindset, and why so many people struggle with that change, and how to approach it differently.
Right, Adam. You know what? Change typically makes people panic. Just to put it straight out there, we don't like change. I had a friend who used to yell, "I hate change." And it always kind of cracked me up. And I remember as I got older, I thought, wow, rough coping mechanism to yell about it. But anyway, I think it's very natural for humans to panic when change happens, especially if it's something they didn't expect. If it's a smack in the head as far as a divorce or a job loss, it can be really rough. Of course, that includes losing people, even to death. So we even work with people going through a loss of a human in their life. So we hate limbo. We hate liminal space. And I found that fascinating. Honestly, I started studying it when in 1991, it was a long time ago, I was already grown and out of the house. But my folks lost their home in a huge fire. It was a fire that consumed 3,200 homes out here in California. And it was fascinating watching how the individuals dealt with it because everybody was so different. We watched people who literally curled up and really just died at the trauma of it all, of having, blocks and blocks and miles burned down. And I watched my parents who were super resilient. My dad, I think he was one of the first people who got his insurance settled out. Of course, I think I heard that he caused his poor insurance adjuster a nervous breakdown. And then he started helping other people. My mom started holding meetings and helping people and started a little magazine rag called The Phoenix for all the people who had been burned out. And I was really impressed with their resilience. They went and bought another place right away and then readjusted and moved to a different area. But hearing how people dealt with it, some people simply moved. And then some, like I said, a couple of them died shortly after. A couple of them started new lives with glee, and some of them literally complained about it the rest of their lives. So that fascinated me, and it's what caused me to go back to school, get a psychology degree, and kind of find out what makes people tick. And I could tell you, if we don't learn how to deal with change in a more graceful manner, it makes life really, really difficult because change happens all the time. So
Yeah.
also realizing there's a system to it. Adam, as you know, when your clients come in, if they're like, oh, I lost my job, they're going to start processing a new beginning, but they've got to honor their ending. Something ended. And when I work mostly with people in retirement, jobs ended, your whole career ended. What could you do to honor that? Maybe even ritualize it. I had a client once who, my favorite client, all my clients are my favorite clients, but my favorite story of a funny ritual was he started working in 1977 when Star Wars started. So he had a Star Wars party. Everybody has their own thing. Some people, I really encourage people to write it out. Write out all the badassery you had. You did a lot. Write it down, honor yourself, thank yourself. So kind of a new beginning starts with an ending. And sometimes that's super unfortunate ending. And that's where we need to have some grace, process it, talk about it, deal with it, and then we get to move into the next phase, which is that liminal phase, which typically causes panic, right? We don't like limbo. We don't like liminal. We want to know exactly where we're going. So many people have an ending and just burst through to the next thing. But this middle part, they call it William Bridges has books on it, calling it the messy middle. I like to call it the miraculous middle because it's where all the work happens and you kind of go in a zigzag fashion and get things done. And it can go on for years. Maybe when you retire, you spend a year figuring things out. Do I want to be on a board? Do I want a part-time job?
Yeah.
How much time do I want to spend with grandkids? And then the third phase is a new beginning. And knowing when people realize there really is a system to it and there's even a lot of books on it, they they chill out a little bit. It's like, oh, I'm not alone. And we
Yeah.
try to remove that panic mode so they can think. Because when people are in panic, they can't see right or left.
It's probably not the best time to make decisions either, or at least difficult.
Right. Yeah. Like they say, after a huge, huge change, you really shouldn't make any major decisions for a year.
Yeah. I think a year is probably a good rule of thumb. But
Yeah.
well, you mentioned your background in psychology
Hmm.
now, coaching. We talked about the fitness, owning a fitness studio, which I find really interesting.
Hmm.
How do you think that mix of those three things influences how you guide clients through these transitions? Whether that's again a career change, job loss, whether that's inadvertent or not, right? A
Hmm.
divorce, or just the
Yeah.
grind of dealing with change.
Yeah, I sold real estate too, and I saw quite often selling real estate, you're dealing with a lot of divorce. People have to sell a house all of a sudden when they get divorced. And I realized then there was a common thread. So I sold real estate, I recruited, I owned a fitness studio. The common thread was coaching. The common thread was almost being a psychologist and all of those, unlicensed, of course. But people, as I said, when change happens, there's a panic phase, and being there to be able to be their sounding board and be able to normalize it for them a little bit, even though everybody's situation is so different and none of it's really that normal. Having that partner in crime, a coach is, a coactive coach is working with you. They're side by side and grab them by the arm and we go together. So it's super individual with each person.
Yeah, and you said you've one of the things we talked about offline was we talked a lot about retirement. So
Yes.
specifically when it comes to the a big decision like retirement, and if you want to speak on a job loss, which obviously isn't a decision at all, right?
Hmm.
What's one piece of advice, or maybe it doesn't have to be one piece, maybe the top two or three pieces of advice that you would offer
Hmm.
someone who's trying to just stay positive, or just trying to stay energized about a change they didn't choose. So maybe
Mm.
for each of those, one for retirement, one for job loss.
Yeah, yeah. For job loss, when you still really kind of have to work, it is getting into community. I'm so big on community now. I'm feeling like, especially, I mean, this was big before COVID, but especially since COVID, we've tend to live in little silos. And I think as Americans too, we've become such individualists that we've almost put ourselves in a little timeout corner, being a little too all about me and trying to do it all alone. We try to do everything alone. That was my MO growing up. You tried to do it alone. You did it alone because you didn't want to bother anybody, But bringing people in is okay. Leaning on people is okay. Hiring a coach is okay. Lean on your financial person. I've called my financial person. She is always there for me, even if it comes to, gee, should I buy this house? What should I? And it's not just financial. She's a good listener. You guys usually are. You typically like people. That's why you do what you do. So realizing you have a community there that you can tap, and then start educating yourself. Educating yourself on what other people do to do this successfully. I worked at a job loss center for, I think about 2 years. And it was rough. It was rough, but I commended everybody because they came in. They joined, they took classes on how to write the best resumes, how to interview well. So there's help out there. In every community, there's help on how to look for a job. But once again, I say step back and mourn a little bit. Because like I said, in this society, we tend not to mourn things. We just plow. Like I'd ask people, oh, you got laid off Friday. What'd you do? Well, Saturday I wrote my resume and blah, blah, blah. And they're just in a panic charge. And like I said, when we're in a panic, we literally have blinders on. It's proven we don't have any creativity working from a panic state of mind. So stepping back from that panic and working fun and activity into your life. I would have people sit for 8 and 10 hours a day on the computer trying to find a job.
Yeah.
Say, nope, let's plan walks in, let's plan workouts in if that's something you do. Don't torture yourself if you hate workouts, but get out there and walk, get out there and have some fun. You got to live a regular life. Job search has to be scheduled in, not a 24/7 thing.
I think that that's so important because, what we do at our office is, we meet people and we take them through a process, an intro call. Then if we decide we want to move forward, we have a big, long 2.5 hour discovery meeting, which is just them talking and us peppering them with questions. Every question you could possibly imagine, probably some questions you never imagined we would ask. Then we have an hour-long education meeting. Then we do an hour-and-a-half financial plan. And throughout this whole process, a big piece of it is cash flow, right? Cash flow between now and retirement. Even more importantly, cash flow after we retire, making sure that
Right.
we're going to make work optional, that making sure that our money lives longer than we do, right? But so I always say that, money is a unit of choice. And the more units you have, the more choices you have. And so much of this money is great. But if you're just logging into your account, logging into your financial plan, and you're just looking at your marbles, those marbles aren't really worth anything if you don't use them on those choices that you have in life. So how important would you say that it is for individuals to really kind of have a focus on what they're going to spend that money on? Like, for instance, just to kind of tee you up, oftentimes people will only tell us when we talk retirement planning specifically about what they're going to do the first 5 or 10 years after retirement, but they don't think about the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And it's not, you're not going to die, hopefully, right? It's 70,
right.
75.
Odds are, yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
So I think what you're saying is, what about the rest of your life other than your money? And yes, it does buy freedom and it does buy those trips. And by the time people come to me, they have a solid sense from their financial person, because I do work alongside some financial folks. They have a sense of what they can afford. But you know what? They often have a hard time spending that money. And that's probably what you're saying.
Yeah,
it's really
exactly.
interesting. So if it was this, they have to adjust to the fact they were saving for 40 years, like rigorously. And now they're dipping into that and going the other way just a little bit, because you still have it. My financial planner said something funny one day. She goes, you don't spend it all at once. I mean, it's still in there investing for you. It's still in there working for you. So it's okay to go back. And that's I don't know how you as a financial planner help people understand that that's okay. What I work with people, they just kind of over time get it. But at first they're like, oh my God, it's like, I'm not putting money in, I'm taking money out. And that's 45 years of a change.
Yeah.
So.
I think for some people it's easier than others. For some people it's too easy, to be honest. But I always say that to our clients that are not yet retired or they're getting ready to retire, worried about what they're going to do with all the time, is that every single time somebody retires, 3 to 4 months later, they come back and they say, I have no idea where I had time to work, because they're so busy doing other things.
Mhm.
As to the spending piece, there are some people, like I said, that we have to kind of rein in a little,
Mhm.
because they're ready to go and spend. And we often talk about front loading your expenses, which just simply means understand that you may spend more that first 10 to 15 years because you're healthy, and you may spend
Mm.
later. And
Oh,
while
that's
you're
a good point.
healthy, when you're healthy, you got to spend that money. You got to have fun, do the things you can do.
Yeah.
But then we also have some trouble with some people who won't spend the money. And the couple things we deal with in those situations would be, getting them to do something like, here, how about we just send you $500 a month, from your portfolio,
Mhm.
gauge it. And some people, especially the older generation, people in their 70s, 80s, we love sending them a check because they love getting a check in the mailbox. There's something
That's
about that piece
brilliant.
of paper.
Yeah,
I remember
psychology.
the first time this one client just comes to my mind. One of my first clients I ever had back in 2001, and we finally got him to start spending some money. And then we came in for their next review. I said, "So, his name was Hunter. He passed away unfortunately, but he says, I said, say, so you've been sending that $500 last 6 months. You want me to turn that off?" And he goes, "Oh, no, 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 no." So now that he's got it and he's comfortable with it, they're enjoying it. It's like, of course we don't want to turn it off now, but it's just getting over that hump that's really tough, I think. But
Mm.
anyway, similarly speaking, I don't know if you work with any
Mhm.
business owners, but there's a stat. We work with a lot of business owners. We help, not just with financial planning, retirement planning, their 401ks,
Mhm.
managing the company 401k, but you also help them with business transition planning and exit planning, and helping them grow, sell their business, increase their multiple. And the stat that just blows my mind, but it's true, is that 75% of owners of companies deeply regret selling their company a year later. And the number one
Ooh.
reason they deeply regret that is because they did not have a plan for what to do when they sold it.
Mm.
And I think,
Mm.
not to play favorites here, because I am a business owner, but I think that is a difference between somebody who is employed and somebody who is self-employed, and that, that business is your baby. You've built
Yes. Oh,
yours,
100%.
probably worked 50, 60, who knows, 70 hours a week at one point, if not
Mhm.
quit. So I think it's I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what would you say to the business owners out there? I mean, I know, again, you already mentioned your average retail investor that has a job at Cardinal Health or Procter and Gamble, or wherever.
Right.
How would you say that's different, or is it different?
You know what? It is different in the few that I've experienced. And and to the point where it was this one gentleman's baby so much that for those, and I think it was about 10 years, he was just like boom, 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 grinding it. Got a really nice offer he couldn't refuse, sold it, and then had to deal not only, and this is another big thing we do as a Western society. He just hadn't grieved anything. He had lost his marriage in the meantime, but he said, "I didn't even process. I just kept going. I just kept working." He had lost a dad. He had lost somebody else in his family. But anyway, he just kept going because he didn't even have time to stop to think. So he found himself at such a loss, and somebody referred him to me, that he was almost inconsolable. He was crying a lot. And I kind of brought him back to, I mean, I'm not a therapist. I don't typically take people back, but I can do so with a few questions like, did you ever did you ever mourn? Did you ever spend time? Of course not. He goes,
Mm.
first of all, I'm a dude. And second of all, I just kept working. And work was like, I was so happy to go back to work after those funerals and after, you
Mm.
know, and just to
Gotcha.
get away from the divorce talk and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no processing whatsoever, which happens to us when we're stressed out. We don't process things in any kind of uh, logical way. We've got what's in front of us, which is that business. So, and that's it. So he was actually grateful when he learned how to cry. And it was beautiful. And never seen anybody cry like from the bottom of their toes. But I mean, I created a safe space, and I was honored that he would do so around me. And it was, he sold it too, and he didn't think he was going to leave it as soon as he did. So he ended up then leaving it sooner because he wasn't getting along with people. So that was an extra slip a smack in the head. So yeah, you lose your baby. You're right. That's a really good point, and it's so good you're cognizant of that. because it's hard to make a plan afterwards when you've been going balls to the wall for that long. And that's an airplane term, by the way. If you've been doing that long, how do
I
you
gotta get
stop? How do you
qualified.
sit there in your chair and go, geez, what am I going to do when I sell this? You really don't. So doing
Hmm.
some exercises with people so they do, but honestly, I don't typically get them while they have the business. I
Sure.
get an after report
Yeah, that
because they
makes sense.
wouldn't have hired a coach. They're too busy.
Right. Oh yeah.
I would
Well,
love to get them because I had a business and I was okay with selling it. I was burnt out. I mean, it was a fitness studio where you're paying for the brick and mortar and you're paying all the bills and you're hiring good people. Because we specialized in baby boomers and their parents back then. Not many boomers have their parents anymore, but um, we were just so heads down in it, and it wasn't a huge profit margin just because I didn't do enough homework ahead of time. I didn't have Adam Koos, so I was just happy to move on with my life and
yeah,
be an employee again.
it's a good
So
transition.
I didn't have that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens sometimes. I think that the what you kind of speak to more is the, when you talk about anybody retiring, but then we just obviously the business owner retiring, just having a plan for more than just the dollars and cents. It's not we're not talking about
Mhm.
KPIs here, right? We're talking about
Right, right.
what are we like? Be perfect example. Client says, "So what are you going to do when this is sold?" It's like, "Well, we're going to build our dream home in Colorado," and I'm like, "Okay, what are you going to do there?" And he goes, "Well, hang out in our dream home." And I'm like, "Well, but what are you
Mhm.
going to do?" And they got frustrated with me. It's like, "Well, I just told you we're going to go to Colorado. We're going to spend time there." I'm like, yeah, but you've been spending 60 hours a week doing things. I'm like,
Yes,
you're going to sit in a chair and watch
and
TV?
with something
Oh,
on your mind.
sure.
Imagine what now you don't have that there.
Yeah.
That's a major vacuum.
Huge change.
It's
Huge
a
change.
major vacuum.
So
Yes.
speaking of, I mentioned tools earlier in the intro. Obviously, it's clear that you've got, you believe in and you use a holistic approach when you're talking to
Mhm.
clients.
Mhm.
Can you share? I mean, you mentioned, I don't want to steal your fire here, but you mentioned the retirement wheel? Can you share some of the
Yeah, yeah.
tools that you
Yeah, and this
recommend?
really comes into play with all my clients, whether retiring or not, just to kind of take a look at every piece of the pie of of their life, right? And so typically when I'm working with people who I don't normally, but I'm trying harder to get the people who haven't retired yet. So often I'm getting them afterwards because they got frustrated because they got bored.
Yep,
And
step
they're
that
like,
plan.
"Yeah, who am I?" And it's just like the business owner you talk about. Um, they were that business. They were that business card. And now who are you? But that goes along with that goes with anybody who's working too. Who are you without your business card? And they have been, I always say that you've been a human doing, now you're a human being. So who
Like
are
that.
you going to be? And, there's a lot of aspects, and I'll run through the wheel just real quick without that, just fly through it. So it's purpose and growth. We deal with purpose. And I know that sounds cliche, but honestly, what's next for you? What is really, really freaking important? And we'll back up to reverse engineer that because we don't really know right away. So we do some exercises around it. We spend time on it. We got a health and fitness wheel. If we don't have our health and fitness, forget the money, right? Life's pretty much harder.
Yeah.
Family and friends. What have you been nurturing those friends? If you've been head down in your business for 10 years, I had people who really got mad at me when I owned that gym because I had zero time. I
Hmm.
worked all the time. And it had fallout. It had fallout. People were insulted, and if you haven't owned your own business, you have no clue the pressure. I always felt like I was on the brink of of sanity, Um, all relationships and partnerships. We talk about that a lot. And what are your first tier people? Do you have those ride or die people that can really count on you? If you don't have a spouse, that's okay, but do you have a ride or die? Who's going to be there if you have to have surgery or who's going to run to emergency if you got popped in? So just those people really close to you need to be nurtured, and have they been? Um Spirituality and reflection, that's under whatever that is for you section. What do you do to take care of your soul? And
Hmm.
totally individual. Adventure, novelty, and then legacy is a big one. Legacy is not just what are you giving, what are you handing out to charities. Legacy is who are you now and who are you leaving? What part of you is leaving a trace on this earth? Because you're leaving a trace on people. You're leaving an indelible mark. What's that going to be? My favorite answer from one of my clients was he thought about it really hard and he just said, love. Love. I want my grandkids to know they're loved. I want my children to know they're loved. So my another really cool one is fun and adventure. What are you doing for fun? Dig back. What'd you like to do as a kid? Did you play ball? What ball are you going to play now? I always have a hula hoop at my house. I make people try my hula hoop. It's so funny because some of the things you did as a kid, you cannot do them without smiling now. Nobody can hula hoop without a smile, no matter how dorky they are and how big their belly's gotten. They cannot not smile. So, I had really fun experience with a client who was really, really down. She was a business owner, actually, and she's the face of the business. So literally flying all over the country, being the face, being, interviewed by the news, interviewed by, and she's a beautiful woman. She's older than me. So this was getting hard on her. And I said, what have you done? Or when was the last time you had fun? And man, that was the longest pregnant pause.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I can't even come up with a thing.
Mm-hmm.
She said, it's been so stressful with this business. I'm so proud of this business. And it was so hard to get it up and running. It's been this. So here we go back to that topic. And about 3 weeks, a month later, she called out of the blue and said, I'm heading to Paris. I told my son I hadn't had any fun. He sent me a ticket to Paris. So we got to have fun, no matter how old we are. And what's fun about getting older is we typically don't don't care as much what we look like or how we come off. So be
It's true.
silly. Isn't it true?
Yeah.
I don't care
Reminds me of
I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm gonna
reminds,
hulu.
reminds me of a Dan Tosh joke. I love Daniel Tosh. He's if people don't like the Tosh point oh stuff that he used to do, his stand-ups are absolutely terribly inappropriate but hilarious. But he
I'm gonna
said,
write that name down.
you think people can't, money can't buy happiness, but try frowning on a jet ski. You can't.
So true. In my case, anytime I'm on a boat on the water, I take a shuttle back and forth, and Santa Cruz has a little shuttle that goes back and forth across.
Hey,
Sometimes I'll go, can I just sit on this for a few
on
trips? And they'll go, okay,
that's right. Some like trains, some like subways, but why not a ride?
whatever it is.
Yeah.
If it's trains, build a model.
Yeah.
My brother's neighbor has a whole train set out front, and he builds, and like
That's fun.
people are mesmerized.
Oh
They
yeah.
stare at
Great.
that thing for the longest time.
Yeah.
And
How's
it
it?
takes us back.
That's always fun. Yeah. Let the
What's
little
that?
your kid out, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's fun to tap in because we've lost touch. We quit having fun at some point. We were told we weren't supposed to do that anymore. So,
Right.
granted, I can't make mud pies. That's kind of not as fun. But the other stuff I did, running
Yeah.
around, I still run around.
Who it was that told me this. It might have been a guest on a podcast, might have been one of my coaches, it might have been a book I read, but this person or the book said something about how we want to be, actually it was Natalie Siston. It was Natalie Siston that her book Let Her Out
Mm,
podcast. And she just talks about how when you're young, you're 5, 6, 7 years old, when you're in your truest form of yourself, like you just don't
hmm
know what you're supposed to be or how you're
Yes.
supposed to
Until
act.
somebody tells you you're not supposed to anymore.
Right. That's exactly
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah. Well, one last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you've coached lots of people over the years. I'm curious, do you have a favorite retirement story, whether it be somebody who was, hired you beforehand, during, or, in panic mode
Mm-hmm.
after stepping on a landmine?
um, I can't think of specific. Well, my favorite story was that silly Star Wars story.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, that was full on. That was you couldn't get in the door if you weren't dressed. I mean, so he took it so seriously. So I love when people will really embrace that ritual. I love when they will honor what they did. So my probably the blanket is I work with a lot of women and a lot of women execs, and for them to get into that human beingness, because for a woman to get that far up, they probably work twice as hard. there at some point with so many of them we talked about, there's an initial 1-year panic. So I started talking to people about taking a gap year.
Mhm.
Why
I
not?
like that.
I
I
mean,
like that.
young people take gap years all the time. We need to learn to be a little more free. And it's okay. You're not expected to know exactly what you're going to do. Most people do have those trips planned, right? They have a few trips planned. They set up kind of I love a system with grandkids. That's a common one. I'm going to pick them up every Tuesday. This one grandkid and cook dinner with them.
Routines, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So those people that you leave behind, watching the lights go on when they realize it's not about the money, it's about who you're going to be next. You get to reinvent. So watching those lights turn on, I don't have to be the hard ass I was or the hard driver, or I don't have to be going by my to-do list anymore, although that is a comfort to most people who are used to it, and that's fine. But really getting the freedom to spend the money and have some fun and quit being miserly if they don't have to, and really coming into their own, really coming into their beingness. And that's meant so many things to different people. Some of them, they do want to be on a board of a nonprofit that means a lot to them.
Yeah.
I travel. I mean, I have a brother that's been traveling for 15 years of retirement and having a blast. So whatever, it's so interesting to see how everybody needs something different. And I
Yeah.
realized when I first started coaching, I think I was kind of thought, well, yeah, it'd be easy to spend money. Why wouldn't you? Do what you want. Well, it's not that easy. It's
Mm.
realizing there's so much more behind that, and walking the path with them has been fun.
No, that's awesome. Well, I want to finish. I'm a huge, huge music fan. In fact, you can't see it in here, but I have a music studio. This is my home office, and there's a music studio down here as well. I don't think I've
Fun.
done it once or twice ever. But as you were talking in the very beginning of our episode here, you said something that made me think of this song. And I'm going to warn everybody, it's a reggae song. It's actually by Stephen Marley, who's the son of Bob Marley. So, and keep in mind, it's in a Jamaican accent. So I'm gonna read it exactly as the lyrics go, but it goes like this. It's called Now I Know. And then he says, you give more, you're receiving less. I guess some things never change. Because here I am alone again, and I find that rather strange. I think of the things we used to do, but I guess that's only me, and all the stages we've been through, but it wasn't meant to be. I might say that I could have had my dreams, at least if nothing else. And mama never raised no fool. I can feel things for myself. What used to be unbreakable, I thought this bond would never break, but nothing's permanent in life, all except for change.
Ooh,
So,
brilliant.
it's a good closer today.
That's
It's
a good closer.
that nothing's permanent in life except change.
100%.
So,
And that's why it's so interesting that it's so hard on us, huh?
yeah, definitely.
That's what I
Thank you so
found.
much for your time.
Thank
That's
you,
been
Adam.
our time for the day. If you'd like to get a hold of Suzanne, you can find her on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to find her, but you can also look her up at SuzanneCampi.com. That's Suzanne, SuzanneCampi.com. It'll also be in the show notes. All the links will be in the show notes as well, as always. But as I always say, there's thousands and thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to give ours a listen today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you like a second opinion on your retirement plan or investment strategy, please head over to libertaswealth.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as legal, financial, tax, or as the basis for investment decisions. Always consult a certified financial planner or a fee-only fiduciary advisor before acting on any ideas discussed.